Good morning and welcome to Rising. We've got such a great show for you today. Again, joined by Lindsay Granger. Nice to see you back in D.C. from your travels.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be back.
You received an award, I believe?
I did. I was honored by the Denver Business Journal for
nice.
Outstanding Women in Business. It was a nomination that came down. So I've lived in Denver for 5 years. As you guys know, I've been back and forth to D.C., but I got this award for our production company, Gilded Focus. So it was a really beautiful event, and I feel recharged and ready to see my friend Robby.
Well, you are indeed outstanding.
Thank you. So coming up on Rising, I'm going to discuss how President Trump's tactics on Epstein are only making things worse.
Plus, Elon Musk and X scored a big win against an AI deepfake law in California.
And James Carville has some bold advice for Democrats who want to, quote, save democracy. But first, we're going to talk about what's on Robby's radar.
Yes, let's get to it. Now, the subject of today's radar is extremely disturbing. In fact, I am still shocked this actually happened. In the history of weird, creepy, and disturbing media stunts, I've never seen something quite like this. Think I'm exaggerating? Well, consider this. Jim Acosta, you may recall, is a former White House correspondent for CNN. He now hosts his own independent show on YouTube, and recently he participated in a baffling interview. He recorded himself talking with the AI-generated image of Joaquin Oliver, a young man who was tragically murdered in the Marjory Stoneman Douglas mass shooting in Parkland, Florida in 2018. Now, the real Joaquin Oliver had his life unfortunately cut short at just the age of 17. The simulacrum of Joaquin is not really him. It's a computer using ChatGPT-esque technology to generate responses. It's ghoulish, it's morbid to pretend that the AI is actually Joaquin Oliver. Yet that's exactly what Acosta does in this interview, in which the ex-CNN host asks him about his interests, his opinions, also what he thinks about gun control. Let's watch just a small part of this video so you get an idea of how disturbing it is.
What your solution would be for gun violence?
Great question. I believe in a mix of stronger gun control laws, mental health support, and community engagement.
Just awful. Now look, Acosta apparently did this with the permission of Oliver's parents, who created this AI representation of their son. According to Axios, Oliver's mother will, quote, spend hours asking it questions. And look, I can't even begin to imagine this family's pain, what they've gone through. I don't blame them for using whatever tools are at their disposal to try to hold on to the memory of their son, to grieve him, to process the loss of him. There's an episode from the science fiction TV series Black Mirror about actually exactly this, a grieving widow using an AI robot to interact with a version of her deceased husband, and whether that helps you bring closure or does it, on the other hand, create a kind of false emotional closeness. But I would never judge someone in this situation. I am, however, perfectly willing to judge Jim Acosta, who should know better than to participate in this ghastly charade. First off, and quite obviously, it is deeply unethical to conduct a journalistic interview with an AI representation of a specific human being. The entity speaking in that interview is not Joaquin Oliver. Representing its responses as the genuine opinions of a human being is wrong. It's bad enough when journalists try to present the policy views of victims of some tragedy as a kind of trump card, as if they have expertise. But here Acosta has gone even further. He's shamelessly using a dead kid to argue for gun control. This artificial intelligence is not alive. It does not speak for Joaquin Oliver. If I claimed that I used my magic psychic powers to commune with the ghost of Thomas Jefferson, and I'll give you his opinion on what the Second Amendment really actually means about guns, you would be correct to ignore me because that's fantasy. It's not journalism. Now also, as technology improves, it may be possible to assemble even more impressive looking and sounding AI reconstructions of other people. As far as entertainment goes, that's perfectly fine. For instance, even though James Earl Jones, the voice actor for the iconic Star Wars villain Darth Vader, he passed away last year, his estate has given permission for AI versions of his voice to be used in Star Wars, in movies, shows, and video games. No issues there. That's fine. But the key difference is Darth Vader is not a real person and is not being presented to you as such. Now, in a statement to the Washington Post, Manuel Oliver, the father of Joaquin, said, well, we feel Joaquin has a lot of things to say, and as long as we have an option that allows us to bring that to you and to everyone, well, we will use it. If the problem you have is with the AI, you have the wrong problem. The real problem is that my son was shot. Jim Acosta added, I think Joaquin's father makes a good point. Well, shame on him. What Jim Acosta, is doing is wrong. Deep down, he must surely know that. And it seems to be that most people feel this way because the response on social media was incredibly 100% hostile and negative, I noticed.
100% is extreme, but maybe
It's-
99%. Because when I first saw this, I thought it was wildly inappropriate. Obviously, as somebody who studied journalism, it's wildly unethical. I understand that. And then I read more about Manuel Oliver, his dad, who wanted this to happen. He actually reached out to Acosta and said, I want you to do this. I think you will handle this well. So, I think Jim Acosta made a choice, but I also know that it was honored by the parents of this victim. And also, this is not the first time they've used AI. They actually had something called the Shot Line, which is like a play on hotline where many victims of the Parkland shooting were calling Congress members with their AI voices being used with permission from their parents to convince them to change some of the laws around guns. And so if that's what the parents want to do to rally and make changes so that they don't see another kid pass away the way their children did, that's a choice. And, honestly, the internet is the wild, wild west. Jim Acosta is not on CNN anymore. So if they played this interview on CNN or here at News Nation, then that would be a different story. But he's on the internet. And so these kind of things are allowed and also argued for.
We would never let this happen. I assume CNN would never actually let this happen. Again, I'm not blaming the parents. I can't imagine being in their situation. But if they approached you, a journalist, wanting to do something like this, the responsible thing is to say, I'm so sorry for your loss. How can I support you? But I absolutely cannot do this. And I find it manipulative to make what AI renderings of these victims and then having the AI calling members of Congress. Because again, we don't know what these people actually felt about these issues, if there were these policy views. Like there's an assumption there that because you've been the victim of gun violence, you think X, Y, Z are the solutions to these kinds of problems. I mean, who knows if they even think that? So then it's like a kind of fraud to be saying, well, here's what the kids would be saying if they were alive. Well, you don't even know that. So it just seems very bad to me.
It can get murky. I read something in May, an AI version of a man that was killed in a road rage incident in Arizona. They played an AI version of that person in the courtroom.
That's awful.
And the judge responded favorably to it and was like, thank you so much for that. As angry as you are to the family, justifiably. To me, I know how you're saying, so it's happening across the board. But then, the same person who wants deregulation on some of these videos, which would be you, right?
Yes.
Where does it draw the line? Just if someone's deceased, or does it?
Well, I'm not saying they should be prevented legally from doing it. Jim Acosta has First Amendment rights. He can absolutely do this. I'm just criticizing him for it. The court thing might be a little different because what you're allowed to bring, what information and evidence you're allowed to introduce into a courtroom is not just like whatever the First Amendment allows, right? It's the judge's courtroom. They get to decide. There's rules of evidence and procedure. You can't just ask questions, when when your attorney is cross-examining, you can't just go in whatever direction you want. So
but the internet also is not full of journalists. We talk about that all the time, right?
Yeah.
And so Jim Acosta has transitioned maybe into a new role, which is to be the person that shares opinion and does the Joe Rogan thing, right?
Jerk. That's the new position. Maybe that's a new position.
No. Why does he have to get called names? Because he made a choice.
I think he deserves a lot of derision for doing this. And you're right, though. We will talk about the court decision on the AI deepfakes. I have a feeling you and I are going to disagree.
I want to hear your consistent take in that. Look,
I will be preparing for it mentally. It's coming later in the show.
Up next, James Carville has some bold advice for Democrats if they want to, quote, save democracy. We'll be right back.